Hey loves, welcome to my channel. Please like, subscribe and hit the notification bell for latest videos. Sit back and enjoy this amazing story. Ralia stood in front of the mirror, her fingers tightening around the rim of the porcelain sink. Her reflection stared back, haunted eyes, trembling lips, and the weight of an entire nation pressing down on her shoulders. The headlines had always focused on her face. Not the daughter of President Filomeno, not the brilliant mind behind countless initiatives at her elite private school, but her face. The unnatural contrast between her deep brown skin and the golden hue of her irises had been a mystery that stirred whispers and speculation. A gift or a curse? Some called it divine, others an abomination. She had endured scrutiny all her life, but the final blow had landed today, an overheard conversation from those she once called friends. "She's not even that special without the hype," one girl scoffed. "I heard her father had some foreign mistress, that's where she got those eyes," another whispered. If she wasn't the president's daughter, no one would care about her. Ralia had felt the sting of betrayal many times before, but this cut differently. The realization settled in her bones. They never truly saw her. She turned away from the mirror, an idea taking shape in her mind, one that would change everything. Ralia didn't waste time. That evening, over dinner, she made the boldest request she had ever spoken aloud. "Baba, I want to leave." President Filomeno nearly dropped his fork. His wife, First Lady Remy Filomeno, frowned. "Leave? To where?" "A different school. One where no one knows who I am." Silence. Her father leaned back in his chair, eyes sharp, calculating. "This is not safe." "I've thought it through," Ralia countered. "I can change my name. Wear sunglasses to hide my eyes. You can have security nearby, just out of sight." Her mother sighed. "And why do you want to do this?" She hesitated. "Because I need to know if anyone will like me for me." It took nearly an hour of back and forth before her father relented. "You'll follow the rules. No one must find out who you are." Ralia nodded, sealing her fate with the weight of her father's conditions. A week later, she was no longer Ralia Filomeno. Now, she was Naya Bello, just another transfer student at a modest secondary school far from the polished gates of her former life. Everything about the school was different. The hallways were narrower, the uniforms were plain, and the students didn't speak in carefully measured tones like the social elite she had grown up around. Here, nobody whispered when she walked past. No reporters waited at the gates. For the first time in years, she felt invisible. And she liked it. She quickly met Toke, a loud, fearless girl who took her under her wing, and Kamal, a boy who barely spoke, but had a habit of sketching in the margins of his notebooks. Days passed, then weeks. For once, she wasn't defined by the weight of her name. But even as she embraced her new life, the nagging fear remained: what would happen if her secret was exposed? Not everyone was convinced by Naya's quiet presence. At the center of the school's social hierarchy was Simi, a girl who thrived on control. She sensed something was off about the new girl, the way she never removed her sunglasses, the careful way she spoke, the expensive wristwatch she tried to hide beneath her sleeve. "She's hiding something," Simi told her closest ally, Iamide. "What do you think it is?" Iamide asked. Simi smirked. "We are going to find out." The whispers started. Rumors spread like wildfire. Why did Naya always keep to herself? Why did she never talk about her past? And why did she wear those damn sunglasses? She ignored them. Or tried to. But when Simi decided to make her move, Naya's world started unraveling faster than she could hold it together. The setup was simple. Kamal had invited her to a quiet spot after school, a place he often went to sketch in peace. She had accepted, unaware of the trap waiting for her. Simi and her clique were already there, phones ready, a crowd forming behind them. "Take off your sunglasses, Naya," Simi said sweetly. "Or should I say, Ralia Filomeno?" Her heart stopped. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone shouted, "She's the president's daughter." The weight of 1,000 eyes bore into her. The world tilted. She turned to Kamal, betrayal washing over her. "You?" "I didn't know," he said quickly. "I swear, Naya, I didn't know." But it was too late. The damage had been done. Her carefully built new life had shattered in an instant. The news spread beyond the school walls. Paparazzi swarmed. Reporters circled like vultures. And worst of all, her friends, Toke and Kamal, were caught in the crossfire. But Ralia had changed. She wasn't the girl who cowered beneath the weight of expectations anymore. She faced the cameras, her voice steady. I am Ralia Falomo. But that's not all I am. And this time, she would decide who she wanted to be. The moment the words left Simi's lips, the world around Ralia blurred. Gasps and murmurs swelled through the crowd, phones flashing as people captured the moment. Panic clawed at her throat, but she refused to show it. Instead, she clenched her fists and met Simi's gaze with cold defiance. I don't owe you an explanation, Ralia said, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. Simi smirked. Oh, but you do. You waltzed in here, pretending to be one of us. Lying. How does it feel to finally be seen? The crowd tightened, their whispers slicing into her like knives. Kamal stepped forward, eyes flicking between Ralia and Simi. Enough, Simi, he said, his voice low. You've made your point. But Simi wasn't done. Kamal, don't tell me you actually care about her. She's been lying to us this whole time. You were her little pet project. Kamal's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Ralia turned and pushed through the crowd. She needed to escape. The air was too thick, suffocating. Her feet pounded against the pavement as she ran, ignoring the voices calling after her. When she reached the school gate, her security detail was already waiting. Without a word, she climbed into the black SUV, her heart hammering against her ribs. The driver sped off, leaving behind the shattered remnants of her disguise. The presidential villa was quieter than usual. Ralia sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the reflection in her floor-length mirror. Her golden eyes, once a mystery, a source of admiration and resentment, now felt like a curse. There was no hiding anymore. A soft knock at her door. Come in, she muttered, already knowing who it was. Her mother stepped inside, her expression unreadable. She sat beside Ralia, placing a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. It was bound to happen eventually. Ralia exhaled sharply. I thought I could control it. You were never in control, her mother said softly. Not in the way you wanted. Silence stretched between them. Ralia clenched her hands. I don't want to go back there. You may not have a choice. Her stomach twisted. She had built something real at that school. Something hers. But now, everything had been tainted. Her mother squeezed her hand. You are more than your father's name, Ralia. And if you still want to prove that, you need to face this. Ralia swallowed the lump in her throat. And if they never see me as anything more. Her mother's eyes were kind but firm. Then make them. The next morning, Ralia woke before dawn. The weight in her chest hadn't eased, but something new had taken root, resolve. At breakfast, she faced her father. I'm going back. He set down his coffee cup, studying her. You're sure? Yes. President Falomo nodded. Then you go back with your head high. The drive to school felt longer than usual. As the SUV pulled up to the gates, students turned, their gazes locked onto the vehicle. The moment Ralia stepped out, a hush fell over the crowd. She met their stares head-on, walking with measured steps toward the entrance. Simi stood near the lockers, arms crossed, waiting. Ralia stopped in front of her. Enjoy your moment. Simi raised an eyebrow. Oh, it's just getting started. Ralia tilted her head. We'll see about that. Then, without another word, she walked away, leaving Simi standing there. The school was hers to reclaim. And she would do it on her terms. By lunch, Ralia could feel the shift in energy. Some students gawked at her, others whispered, but a few, just a few, looked at her differently. Kamal was one of them. She found him at their usual spot under the acacia tree, his sketchbook in hand. When he saw her, relief flickered across his face. I wasn't sure if you'd come back, he admitted. Ralia sat beside him. I almost didn't. He hesitated, then asked, why did you lie? She sighed. Because for once, I wanted to know what it felt like to be normal. Kamal nodded, flipping through his sketchbook. You know what's funny? What? He turned the book toward her, revealing a sketch of her sitting under the tree, sunglasses perched on her nose. Even when you were pretending, you never stopped being you. A lump formed in her throat. She looked at him, truly looked at him. Does it change things? He met her gaze. Only if you let it. For the first time since her secret had been exposed, Ralia felt there was hope. The following week, the school announced a major event, a debate competition. Simi, of course, had been leading the team for years. Ralia, however, had other plans. She approached the debate coach after class. I want to join the team. He blinked at her. You do realize Simi runs that group? I do. And you still want to try? Ralia smiled. More than ever. The coach chuckled. Well then, let's see what you've got. Simi wouldn't know what hit her. The day of the debate trials arrived with an electric tension in the air. Students gathered in the auditorium, whispering among themselves as they watched the unfolding scene. Simi stood at the front of the stage, arms crossed, exuding confidence. Her clique flanked her, smirking as Ralia approached the judges' table. You've got to be kidding, Simi scoffed. Debating isn't for frauds. Ralia met her gaze without flinching. Then it's a good thing I'm not one. The debate coach cleared his throat. Let's keep it professional, ladies. The competition is open to all. Simi rolled her eyes but took her seat. One by one, students presented their arguments, some strong, some weak. Ralia waited her turn, tuning out the murmurs around her. When her name was finally called, she stepped forward, her voice steady. The topic was announced, power and responsibility in leadership. Perfect. As she spoke, she weaved in personal experiences, without revealing too much, highlighting the burden of leadership and the need for true accountability. Her words were sharp, precise, and delivered with quiet strength. The room fell silent, captivated. When she finished, the judges exchanged glances before nodding. Well structured, well articulated, one of them said. A clear contender. Simi's jaw tightened. She knew she had been outmatched, and it was clear she wasn't going to let it go. Later that evening, as Ralia walked toward the school gates, she heard hurried footsteps behind her. You really think you've won something? She turned to see Simi standing there, arms folded, eyes dark with frustration. Ralia sighed. I didn't do this to spite you, Simi. It's just a debate. Simi took a step closer. You should have stayed in the shadows, pretending to be nobody. Because now, I will make sure you regret stepping into my world. There was something in her voice, something colder than before. A warning, or maybe a threat. Ralia held her ground. If you think intimidation will scare me off, you don't know me at all. Simi's lips curled into a smirk. We'll see. She turned on her heel and walked away, leaving Ralia with a sinking feeling in her chest. She had won the first battle, but a much bigger storm was on the horizon. The next day at school, an eerie silence followed Ralia as she walked through the hallways. She could feel eyes on her, hear the hushed whispers traveling from group to group. Simi's words had carried weight, and it was clear that something was brewing beneath the surface. By lunchtime, a new rumor had taken root. As she reached for her tray in the cafeteria, a voice rang out. Guess money doesn't buy everything. Laughter rippled through the students. Ralia turned to see a boy she didn't recognize leaning against a table, smirking at her. He wasn't alone, several others nodded in agreement, entertained by his remark. She had been through this before, but this time, it felt different. This wasn't just curiosity, or harmless gossip. This was hostility. Ignoring them, she took her tray and walked toward her usual table, but she didn't make it far before a loud, deliberate cough sounded from behind her. She turned in time to see someone knock over a cup, splattering juice across the floor just in front of her feet. Careful, princess, another voice sneered. Wouldn't want to ruin your disguise. A hush fell over the cafeteria. Ralia took a deep breath, steadying herself. This wasn't just about exposure anymore. It was about survival. Kamal and Toke appeared beside her, their presence a silent but powerful statement. Kamal placed a hand on her shoulder, his gaze locked on the ones instigating the scene. She's not bothering anyone, he said calmly. Move on. For a moment, it seemed like the tension would escalate, but then the group exchanged glances, shrugged, and dispersed. The moment passed, but Ralia knew it was far from over. She had started a war she wasn't prepared for, and Simi wasn't the only one taking shots. That evening, Ralia sat on her bed, staring at her phone. A message from Toke blinked on the screen. "Meet me outside in 10. Curious but wary, she slipped on her hoodie and made her way downstairs. The school grounds were quieter at night, but the street just outside was buzzing with activity. She found Toke leaning against a parked motorcycle, arms crossed. "We need to talk," Toke said, straight to the point. "I know you can handle yourself, but this thing with Simi. It's getting ugly." Ralia sighed. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. No one ever does." Toke exhaled. "But Simi. She's not just playing games anymore. She's making moves." Ralia frowned. "What do you mean?" "She's talking to people outside of school," Toke said carefully. "People who don't play by the rules." A chill ran down Ralia's spine. She had expected rumors, sabotage, even some form of public humiliation, but this was something else entirely. "So, what do I do?" she asked quietly. Toke stuttered her before answering. "You stand your ground. And you make sure she knows you're not afraid of her." Ralia nodded, but as she walked back inside, she couldn't shake the feeling that things were spiraling out of control faster than she could handle. And she wasn't sure how much longer she could keep up the fight. Sleep came in fragments. Ralia lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with possibilities. The weight of Toke's warning sat heavy on her chest. People who don't play by the rules. What did that mean? How far was Simi willing to go? At some point, exhaustion took over, and she drifted into an uneasy sleep. A loud bang against her window jolted her awake. Heart pounding, she shot up, pulling the curtains aside. The streetlights outside cast long shadows, but something moved just beyond the school fence. A figure, hooded and still. Watching. She froze. The figure didn't move for what felt like an eternity, then, with deliberate slowness, raised a hand and pointed at her. No words. Just the gesture, silent and menacing. Then they disappeared into the night. Ralia stumbled back, her breath ragged. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't just high school drama anymore. It was a threat. The next morning, Ralia felt the tension from the moment she stepped onto school grounds. She kept her head high, but her mind was still stuck on the shadowy figure outside her window. Was it just intimidation? Or something worse? Kamal noticed her unease instantly. "You look like you didn't sleep," he said, handing her a juice box, his silent way of offering support. She hesitated before accepting it. "Something happened last night." He stiffened. "What do you mean?" Before she could answer, a commotion near the entrance pulled their attention. A group of students had gathered, whispering and pointing at something taped to the bulletin board. Ralia pushed through the crowd, and her stomach dropped. A picture of her, taken in secret. Not from school, but from outside her house. Beneath it, a note in red marker. "Some masks are meant to be torn off." Her vision blurred. It was no longer about rumors. Someone had followed her. Someone knew where she lived. The crowd buzzed with speculation, their voices blending into a dull roar. Who even took this? This is going too far. Maybe she's hiding something even bigger. Ralia swallowed hard. Her hands clenched into fists, but Kamal was already pulling the picture down, crumpling it in his hands. "Enough of this," he muttered. He turned to her. "This isn't just school politics anymore, Ralia." She nodded, trying to steady her breathing. "I know." From the other side of the hall, Simi watched. A slow, knowing smile spread across her lips. And for the first time, Ralia felt the cold certainty that this wasn't just about rivalry. It is war. Ralia spent the rest of the school day locked in silent contemplation. The picture, the note, it was a message, clear as day. Someone wanted to push her, to make her crack. She couldn't afford to let them. But she also couldn't ignore the sinking feeling that this was only the beginning. As soon as the final bell rang, she slipped out of class, avoiding the usual crowd. She had to think, had to strategize. Heading toward the library, She barely noticed Kamal until he fell in step beside her. "You're being followed," he murmured under his breath. She stiffened. "Who?" "3 guys. Been watching you all day. And they are not students." Ralia's pulse spiked. "Are you sure?" "I don't take chances with things like this." His tone was deadly serious. A chill ran down her spine. She had expected Simi's mind games to escalate, but this was beyond school politics. This was calculated. Organized. Dangerous. "I need to go," she said quickly, pivoting toward the back exit. Kamal grabbed her wrist. "Not alone." She hesitated. She had always fought her battles solo, but something about the way he looked at her made her pause. She nodded. "Fine. But we move fast." They cut through the school's back gate, slipping through an alley before emerging onto a quiet road. For a moment, it seemed like they had lost whoever was tailing them. Then, the black sedan appeared at the end of the street. Ralia's blood ran cold. Kamal reacted first. "Move," he ordered, gripping her wrist and pulling her toward a side street. They darted between buildings, weaving through narrow pathways in an effort to lose the car. But the sound of tires screeching told them their pursuers weren't giving up. "This isn't random," Ralia muttered between breaths. "Whoever they are, they planned this." "No doubt." Kamal led her toward an old mechanic's shop, ducking behind a stack of discarded tires. He peeked around the edge. "They are circling back." Ralia pressed her back against the wall, her thoughts racing. Who were these people? Were they sent by Simi? Or had she angered someone far worse? "We need to split up," she said. "If we stay together, we are easier to track." Kamal looked like he wanted to argue but nodded. "Fine. You head toward the main road, blend in. I'll loop around and keep them distracted." She hesitated. "Be careful. You too." With that, they parted ways. Ralia kept her head down as she moved, heart hammering in her chest. She reached the crowded street and forced herself to walk casually, despite every fiber of her being screaming at her to run. A few minutes passed. Then a voice, low and chilling, spoke from behind her. "You really thought you could hide forever?" Ralia turned slowly, dread pooling in her stomach, as she faced the person who had been hunting her all along. Ralia turned slowly, her heart pounding as she faced the source of the voice. The man standing before her was older, dressed in a sharp navy suit, his gaze cold and unreadable. He wasn't a student. He wasn't from the school. And from the way he studied her, she knew he had been watching her for a long time. "You've made quite a mess for yourself," he said, taking a step forward. "But that ends now." Ralia forced herself to stand her ground. "Who are you?" The man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "That doesn't matter. What matters is that you listen carefully." A chill ran down her spine. This wasn't a random scare tactic. This was calculated. "You've been living a lie, pretending to be someone you're not," the man continued, his voice smooth but menacing. "And that's dangerous." She clenched her fists. "If you think threatening me will make me run, you don't know me at all." He tilted his head, amused. "Oh, I know exactly who you are. And if you don't back down, I'll make sure everyone else does too." Ralia felt the weight of his words settle deep in her chest. Whoever he was, he had power. He had resources. And he wasn't bluffing. She needed to figure out what he wanted, and fast. Ralia spent the next few days looking over her shoulder. The man's warning haunted her thoughts, but she couldn't let fear control her. She needed answers. Kamal was worried. "We should tell someone," he said as they sat by the school's back gate, away from prying ears. "Tell who?" "My father." "That would ruin everything," Ralia muttered. Toke frowned. "Then we find out who he is." No one shows up like that without a reason. It was a solid plan, but Ralia had no idea where to start. Then, as if fate had a twisted sense of humor, a letter appeared in her locker the next morning. "Meet me at the abandoned lot behind the old train station. Midnight. Come alone." She read the note twice, her stomach twisting. This was reckless. This was dangerous. But she had no choice. At midnight, Ralia arrived at the lot, the cool night air thick with tension. The streetlights barely reached this part of town, casting long shadows that seemed to shift with every movement. A figure stood by the rusted fence, waiting. As she approached, she recognized the man from before. "I see you are braver than I thought," he said. Ralia crossed her arms. "You wanted to talk. So talk." The man smirked. "Your little act may have fooled the school, but it didn't fool the right people. There are forces bigger than Simi, bigger than your little games, watching you." Her blood ran cold. "Why?" He stepped closer. "Because you don't belong in that school. And some people don't like disruptions." She swallowed hard. "I'm not leaving." His smirk faded. "Then you'd better be ready for what comes next." The next few weeks were relentless. The school was no longer just a place of learning, it had become a battlefield. Simi's games escalated. Rumors about Ralia spread like wildfire. Teachers began scrutinizing her. Even Kamal and Toke found themselves in the crosshairs, accused of cheating on tests, being called troublemakers. It was systematic. It was calculated. And it was coming from outside the school's walls. One afternoon, Ralia found a stack of printed photos taped to her desk. Pictures of her walking through the city. Eating at a restaurant. Entering the school gates. She gritted her teeth. "They are watching me." Kamal picked up one of the photos, his expression dark. "This is getting out of hand." Toke's eyes flashed with determination. "Then it's time we start fighting back." Ralia, Kamal, and Toke began piecing together the puzzle. They started following the movements of the man in the suit, tracking his connections. The deeper they dug, the more disturbing the truth became. He wasn't working alone. The school administration was involved. The influence reached further than they had ever imagined. "This isn't about me," Ralia whispered as they huddled over the evidence. "This is about control." The school wasn't just a school. It was a breeding ground for power plays, manipulated by those who wanted to control the country's future. And she had walked straight into the center of it. But she wasn't backing down. Ralia knew the only way to win was to take away their power. And that meant exposing the truth. Using Kamal's hacking skills, they gathered proof, emails, financial records, hidden deals. It was risky, but it was their only chance. Then they made their move. During a school-wide assembly, the files were released. Screens lit up with undeniable proof of corruption. The principal's face paled. The students gasped. The teachers whispered in shock. Simi, caught in the chaos, turned to Ralia, her expression unreadable. "You really had to burn it all down, didn't you?" Ralia met her gaze, unflinching. "You never should have tried to bury me." The fallout was immediate. Investigations were launched. The school was shut down temporarily. And the people behind the scheme. They lost everything. Ralia had won. But victory came with a price. Months later, Ralia stood outside her new school, a fresh start ahead of her. Kamal and Toke stood beside her, ready to begin again. "Do you regret it?" Kamal asked. She smiled. Not for a second. She had come in hiding, unsure of who she was. Now, she walked forward, head held high, knowing exactly who she had become. And no one would ever silence her again. Please like this video, it means the world to me. Hit the notification bell to be aware when we drop amazing stories. I would like to know which country and time you are watching from. Kindly mention in the comment section.